We'll go ahead and formally get started.
Sure.
I'd like to welcome State Attorney General Bob Ferguson to the Columbian. Thank you very much for stopping by.
Absolutely.
So it's a pleasure to speak with you, and it's kind of nice and we can just have a relaxed conversation instead of campaign stuff and worrying about the election.
Yeah.
So thanks for coming in.
Of course.
Couple of housekeeping things. Lauren Dake is sitting in with us. She's not a member of the editorial board, but she'll be joining us and asking questions.
Sure.
And then just so you know, we are videotaping this as we always do.
That's
we'll
fine.
Post it on the web.
Sure.
So we'll go ahead and get started.
Yeah.
And what brings you to town? What's on your agenda?
Yeah, I've been the last couple of days. I've been in Portland. There's been a conference with some AGs around the country. So I was in Portland. And I've hit a couple of the Vancouver Rotaries as well. So. Yeah, so that's it. Then after here, heading back north.
Let me interrupt. So the meeting of the AGs, were they all Democrats? Or
so this was a Democratic AG. Sometimes the last conference was all AGs, right?
Okay.
So Republicans have their own, Democrats have their own, then there's one that's just everybody. So this happened to be hosted by Ellen Rosenblum, and was Democratic AGs. There were a fair number of them there. Yeah. And so the conference just wrapped up this morning, and so
Thanks for stopping.
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
And like you mentioned earlier, as we were sitting down, there was a lot of attention when Washington led the fight against President Trump's first travel ban.
Right.
What's been the fallout, the reaction, and where can we expect to go from here on that?
Yeah, I mean the reaction's been, I think positive. You know, it's anytime you do something that gets a lot of public attention, the feedback tends to be more in terms of what people write or call tends to be more negative than positive, is my experience. This is actually different. It's been overwhelmingly positive in terms of letters, emails, phone calls. But look, I understand it's a controversial decision, and people have different views on it. So, but no, overall the response has been good, and thankfully we prevailed. That was. There's a lot of credit to my team who, at the time we decided to file the lawsuit, sort of the conventional legal wisdom. If you're watching CNN, Alan Dershowitz from Harvard or Jeffrey Toobin, those legal experts were saying, hey, it's not going to work. The AG doesn't have standing to bring the case, or the arguments aren't very good, and yet we were correct. Every judge agreed with us who looked at it. So I was really proud of the team. They worked hard. They worked around the clock. They worked very long hours. And to their credit, that executive order was signed on a Friday night. We had a complaint filed with all of our declarations Monday, which is remarkable, really. The team pulled it off. And then by Friday, we were before the judge, and he struck it down. So within a week of it being entered, we were before a judge and had it struck down.
Was that a matter of the state's arguments being better than people expected, or just the administration's arguments were so poor?
No, I think it was our arguments are better than people appreciated. That's a good question, but I think that's right. And a lot of folks just felt, sort of legal experts, hey, the president has a lot of discretion in issuing executive orders, which a president most certainly does. And I think there was a sense of, hey, that deference is essentially sufficient. The president can do what he wants. But that is not unlimited. I mean, Barack Obama, when he was president, issued an executive order on immigration reform, and a Texas attorney general challenged that, and a Texas federal judge struck that down. I mean, it happens, right, that these are not unlimited authorities. It did trouble me in terms of the arguments the federal government made. One thing that troubled me greatly was that in their brief, which was otherwise an excellent brief, the federal government's Department of Justice's brief, they didn't just say that the president's authority was broad to issue an executive order, which it is. They wrote that the president's authority was unreviewable. Unreviewable in the brief. And at oral argument, when the judges at oral argument at the Ninth Circuit, that was the one that was telephonic, that was sort of aired all over the place. When the judges asked, hey, are you really saying, Department of Justice, that the president's authority is unreviewable? And there's a long pause, like 6 or 7 seconds. And then the answer is yes. So they literally asserted that the president's authority was unreviewable. Look, that's never been the law. It's not the law. I won't allow it to be the law. That's not okay. We have we're a democracy. We have a judiciary.
Why would they even try to assert that?
Well, I can't get in their heads on that, right? Who knows? Maybe their client asked that it be asserted. But they just took an argument that is a decent argument for them. The president has broad authority. They just took it too far. Now, lawyers do that sometimes. You actually take a good argument and you turn it into a weak one by overextending it, right? And I think but it's hard for me to know what motivated them. But they wrote it in their brief. It wasn't like a slip of the tongue in an oral argument where that can happen to anybody, right? It's in their brief. And now they have dialed that back for the revised travel ban, right? They haven't been as forceful. They tried to dial it back a little bit. But that was a part of the argument that I found really troubling. And I was proud of my Solicitor General in court in response that he thought that argument was frightening. He said that's truly frightening, which it is. I think whatever you think of the travel ban, I get that there are different views on it, right? That's okay, but the president, he's accountable
Sure.
to the courts just like you and just like me. Yeah.
Now, in my understanding regarding the two travel bans is that the administration has tried to argue in court that it is not a Muslim ban, but the courts have taken Trump's own words from which he frequently stated during
Yes.
the campaign that he wants to
That's right.
institute a Muslim ban.
That's right.
So is that accurate? That's come back to bite him in that regard?
That's accurate, and his advisors as well. So I guess a couple thoughts. You're right. During the campaign, Donald Trump said, hey, I'm calling for a complete and total shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. I think that's almost a direct quote. And then after he was elected, Rudy Giuliani, for example, went on national TV and said, hey, the president, Donald Trump, has asked me to put together a commission to create a Muslim ban and to make it legal, which I think is problematic, right? But okay, but it's they were not shy. They were putting out there, here's what we're going to do. So a lot of folks have, and those were in our complaint. Those kind of statements were in our complaint. And a lot of folks have said, well, hey, Bob, how can you take a statement from a campaign and use it against a president? So I recognize the context is a little bit unusual, right? But what's not unusual is that in looking at a document, right, a law, for example, what we have to show is a motivating factor, not the motivating factor, but a motivating factor in creating that executive order was an animus towards Muslims. Now, these kind of lawsuits go on all the time, right, around laws and whether there's a violation of some kind in the motive behind it. And in looking at the document, yes, you look at the words on the document, but the document doesn't have to say this is a Muslim ban in order to be unlawful. In other words, courts are allowed, in fact, they do it all the time. You can look behind the four corners of the document to see what was motivating. Because you can have a document that on its face is neutral, but if the motivation, right, is an animus towards a religion, for example, that's not okay. And you're allowed to look at the statements of the principals who thought of it, who devised it, who wrote it. That's all entirely appropriate. So there's nothing unusual at all about that. What's unusual is his statements happen to be during a campaign, or Giuliani on national TV saying, here's what the president asked me to do. I acknowledge that is unusual, but the concept of using someone's words, that's absolutely relevant. Just like, hey, we're asking for emails, we'll be taking depositions to ask, hey, what was going on when they put together this document? What was their motivation?
But isn't that a bit of a slippery slope? How far back can we take somebody's words? If I said something dumb in college, can that be used in court 20 years later?
Well, I mean, the courts would look at that, right, and the timeliness of it, but this is not that long ago. He's running for president. He says, I'm going to create a complete and total shutdown of Muslims in the country, and then you adopt an executive order that has that effect, and your advisors are saying this is what we're doing. I mean, so to keep in mind, there's his campaign, and it wasn't a one-off. He had multiple statements on his campaign website. It is, campaign ends in November. In January, Rudy Giuliani is going on national TV saying the president's asked me to put together a commission for a ban on Muslims just to make it legal. So these are all in a pretty tight time frame, right? So now look, of course, those are factors the court looks at. Well, you can look at the statements. How long ago were they? Are they really relevant to the document or not? Are they tangential to the document? All those things are absolutely relevant to a court making that determination. But just the concept that you can take a principal's words and use it against them, that's happens every day, honestly, in courtrooms around the country. There's nothing unusual about that. It's just the context is a little different. But look, we'll be asking to take Rudy Giuliani's deposition, for example. I mean, that they'll resist that, right? But we're allowed to take discovery and seek emails and see what information they had when they established it. Yeah.
And then following the overturn of the first travel ban, then President Trump made a comment about a so-called judge.
Yeah.
What was your reaction to that?
I'm a lawyer. It's disappointing, to put it mildly. I mean, look, we win some, we lose some, right? That's, the one thing we don't do as lawyers is criticize the judge in that way, right? It's one thing to say, hey, I disagree with the judge. I think the ruling is flawed. Okay, that's all fair game. But it's a judge who was appointed by George W. Bush, for crying out loud, right? Unanimously confirmed by the U.S. Senate, 98-0. he's a widely respected judge. I mean, honestly, I don't know what to say. I mean, any judge, you shouldn't say that. Judge Robart, my goodness. And but I guess for me, it's partly that, but it's also just it's the respect for the judiciary is important to me, and I think to our society, and to have a president criticize a judge in that way, it's troubling. There's no two ways around it. Or I think the Attorney General Sessions, when the judge in Hawaii issued the injunction on the revised one, I forget the exact quote, but something like, how can a judge on an island in the Pacific, again, look, I guess I just would prefer they focus on filing their appeal, saying they respectfully disagree, and will file their appeal. I think that seems like the grown-up way to handle it. But I think it is damaging to I think that is, if people in our society hear that, I think that is damaging to our system of government. I think it is. It's one thing to say that about another elected official. That's kind of part of the rough and tumble maybe of politics, right? But the judiciary, that's, yeah.
Well, I was going to ask, I read that you kind of anticipated this coming, and your timeline shows that maybe that was also part of the case.
Yeah.
Do you anticipate more of these? I know you also invited Trump out for the national monuments recently.
Right.
And there's a lot of other issues that Washington doesn't necessarily align with the federal government on.
Right.
Marijuana.
Yep.
So do you anticipate more of these type of lawsuits against the federal government?
Yeah, I mean, the national monuments is entirely possible. Have litigation there if they move forward in the direction they seem to be heading. So, it's a challenge. I mean, yes, it's true for the original travel ban. I mean, we anticipate to the extent that those statements were being made, and I took those seriously. I mean, I thought he really would deliver on what he said he was going to do, and so the team knew I cared about it. They knew when it came out they were to review it right away. It wasn't like, hey, we're going to wait till the weekend's over. They knew once it's signed, go to work on it, right? And so, so I think I think we were ahead of other states in part because of those two reasons. We really were talking about it. The team knew I cared, and they knew go to work right away on it. And that's what happened. Like, literally, their attorney canceled a ski vacation. She was off on a ski slope on a Friday. I think when they came down, she drove to the office, that the legal team just descended on the office that weekend to go to work. So I think that definitely is part of it. Combined with, there was, because the original executive order went into effect immediately, which meant people who were on airplanes with visas were turned away once they landed, right? I really felt strongly, hey, every hour mattered, right? That there wasn't time for a 15-page memo from NOAA, my Solicitor General, which I would typically get for a big case, and have a long conversation, and a decision had to get made, and had to be made quickly. And so I think those were some elements. Moving forward, it's I've been grappling with how best to decide how to handle different initiatives coming from this administration. And so one clear division is, hey, it can't just be a policy difference I have. We have to feel something's unlawful, right? Very important, right? And that's number one. Number two, when making the decision on the travel ban, the questions that Noah and my Solicitor General, Noah Purcell, and I were talking about are the questions we ask for almost any case. Is, are Washingtonians being harmed, right? Do we have good constitutional arguments? And can I bring the lawsuit? As opposed to, let's say, the person on the plane who's turned away, they can obviously bring a lawsuit, they've been harmed, but can the Attorney General bring it on behalf of the people, which is always a big issue, right? Mm-hmm. Do I have standing to bring it? Those are the questions we ask. And so there have been at least one case I can recall where I had a very strong view about what the president was doing. We felt it was unlawful. But the harm to Washington was minor, candidly. Was there something there? Yeah, but other states are going to do something. Hey, great, I'm glad they're doing it, but that's not our fight, okay? And so even if it's unlawful, that's not enough. It's got to be, I feel that Washingtonians are being harmed and that we should be involved and that we can win, right? And so that's what we focus on for each of those cases. Now, I'd elaborate just a little bit more. I have tried to give we meet every week to talk about, we have a team that meets every week to talk about what's happening. And for me, part of my job is to prioritize for them what I think is especially important. National monuments was one where I said early on, hey, we have national monuments that could be impacted. I think the state cares about that. I care about these issues. Therefore, go to work. There's a team in kind of like travel. There's a team in place. They're doing legal research. They are, they're on it, sort of thing. And so that's what we're trying to do. But candidly, we're kind of it's
important to choose your battles.
absolutely 100. Look, it's from resources. It's
to teach my kids.
absolutely, but it's really true, right? It's picking your battles and putting the resources in the right way. And so and the other benefit is, hey, I just came from this meeting of other Democratic AGs. Hey, other states can lead certain cases. We can even be involved in the case, but another state can lead it, and we can have a supportive role, but they take the laboring arm.
Is that what happened in the sanctuary cities?
So we have not filed a lawsuit on that. The city of Seattle did, and I was having conversations with the mayor about it. We were definitely having conversations about it. We considered joining as an actual litigation, but just felt, hey, the city of Seattle, they had the resources. They had an excellent law firm helping them out. They're moving forward. We may file an amicus brief in support or something like that, right? There's other ways for us to be involved, but we didn't think we had to formally be involved for that voice to be heard, frankly. Yeah. So there's a lot of factors that go into it in making these decisions. But it's a big part of my job right now. I mean, it's probably every day there's some conversation around what's happening and the key is trying to make decisions on resources, right? And prioritizing for the team what matters, what they should focus on.
And I want to go back from the standpoint you mentioned that the travel ban was no surprise.
Correct.
So Trump had talked about this frequently during the campaign, and still people voted for him.
Yeah.
So at what point do you say, well, that's what the people want? We knew this was coming. Shouldn't we defer to the voters' will?
Yeah, I mean, my criteria is whether it's lawful or not.
Okay.
Right? So, believe me, the president does many things I disagree with, but if it's not, in our view, unlawful and doesn't harm Washingtonians, that's up to our congressional delegation or to the people to write or whatever, right? So, no, hey, at the time we challenged a travel ban, it was popular in the polls. I mean, it was, and as I said, legal experts thought it was lawful. But I have to go with what we think, as a team, and it's not a popularity contest for me. It's not, right. It's if we think it's unlawful and it's harming Washingtonians. Hey, we had a University of Washington student who was denied entry back into the United States, right, into Washington State. So that's where we have to go with it. That's our analysis, and we just try really hard to stay focused on those questions and let the chips fall where they may from there. Yeah.
And then regarding the national monuments, which might become an issue. Mm-hmm. I think one frequent criticism from conservatives is that the federal government owns or protects so much land, and the state governments own so much land. Mm-hmm. Shouldn't we defer to the people in that one, if that is a concern? Or is that something worth fighting for?
I mean, there are ways if folks want us to roll back protections on national monuments. We're just saying the president can't just unilaterally do it. Mm-hmm. That power has never been exercised. We don't think that power exists, right? Again, it's that point, right, that the president cannot just unilaterally do it. So there are protections around those monuments, and so that's what I think is my job as the Attorney General for the people of the state of Washington. We have those national monuments; they are protected. The president cannot unilaterally roll those back. That's our role in this. So again, it's not. Look, I understand he's been elected, but I sued the Obama administration twice, right? It wasn't. I mean, if
what cases were those?
Both Hanford cleanup,
okay,
and then the worker safety issue at Hanford.
Sure.
We essentially prevailed in the cleanup, and the Hanford worker safety issue is still going forward. So it's not about the occupant of the White House. It's Washingtonians being harmed, and we think what they're doing is unlawful. I think at that point, it's my responsibility to do something at that point. That's my job description. That's what I'm supposed to be doing. Yeah, and then hey, the voters can decide if they like my decisions or not. That's up to them to decide every few years, right? And that's entirely appropriate as well. Hey, for Rob McKenna when he challenged national health care law, I think that had some consequences for him. Candidly, politically, he did what he thought was the right thing to do, but it's up for the voters then to decide whether they like that decision. Yeah.
Now, what are your legislative priorities this year? Is there anything up in Olympia that's...
Yeah, I actually should have probably brought a list so we can get some to you. We've had, I think, now 6 agency request legislation that have been passed and signed by the governor or about to be signed by the governor. So there's a range of bills, and obviously several that did not pass. So we probably had, think, Greg, maybe 10 to 12 bills we proposed this year. So pretty robust legislative agenda this year. Longer session, so it tends to be a bit more. So high-profile bills like abolishing the death penalty did not get traction, or a ban on the sale of assault weapons and limiting high-capacity magazines, which we'll bring back next year. And just as a side note, if you want to get, I think the abolishing the death penalty, I do think that has, while it didn't go, frankly, anywhere this year, I think that has the potential to move next year. The state Senate would have to, essentially, as long as the Republicans control the state Senate, I don't think it will move, but it's a one-vote majority. If that was a change this year with an election, I think with that change, death penalty, abolishing the death penalty would move in the legislature. I believe that. It's the votes are there in both the House and the Senate. There's bipartisan support. The votes are there. What we have now is the House says we won't move on it because the Republican Senate won't move on it. Republican Senate says we're not going to move because the House won't take a vote. So it's kind of right. But I think if the leadership in the Senate changed, candidly, there are Republicans like Mark Malosha and Maureen Walsh. They're not just supporters; they're very strong supporters of abolishing the death penalty. And some Democrats like Jamie Peterson and David Frock and others who, again, aren't just supportive. They're like, they really want this to happen. So I think if the leadership was a change, which is entirely possible this year in November, I think you'd see that bill. I really think you'd see it move. So anyway, that's a kind of a side. Mm-hmm. I have to chat more about that if you want. We had a series of bills that passed. They sort of run the gamut of issues. A couple relate to student loans, which is just a growing issue. We have a lot of litigation against student loan servicers that are not playing by the rules. A huge lawsuit against Navient, offshoot of Sallie Mae, basically. Illinois and Washington are the two states suing Navient. That's a mammoth piece of litigation around deceptive practices with on student loans. But we have one example of a bill we have which is passed is I forget which state we can get it for you. It's not Wisconsin, but a state like Wisconsin. They passed a law a year or two ago that said that students must receive, I think it's annually, an update on the status of their student loans, how many loans they've taken out, what that totals, what the interest is, what it's going to take to pay it back. And what they found by providing that information to students, the actual amount of student loans taken out dropped by 15%. In other words, students had they realized how much they had, what that interest was. They saw it in black and white, and they made adjustments in their decisions, which I can relate to. I borrowed $100,000 to go to law school, and which seemed like a lot of money back in early 1990s. But I remember going to a presentation once in which someone talked about we're all borrowing money to go to law school, and they talked about if you buy a pizza, the pizza costs you $15 or $20, but you are borrowing the money that pays for that pizza. So by the time you pay off that pizza in 5 years or whatever she was saying, it's going to cost you X amount of money. And I remember that making I realized, whoa, right, of course, I hadn't thought of it in those terms before, but it was absolutely true, and I absolutely adjusted how I, my behavior, accordingly, I try not to eat out as much. I realized what that was actually costing me. So it's the same principle here. So that bill passed the legislature and either has been signed by the governor or is about to be signed. Another bill we had on a different topic relates to wage theft, which is a big issue. So wage theft is I'm an employer, I work at a coffee shop or a restaurant, whatever it is, and you do not pay me the wages I've earned. Maybe you withhold the tips that I'm entitled to. Maybe you don't pay me my last paycheck. You'd be shocked at how prevalent wage theft is around the country and in the state of Washington. We'll get you some numbers if you're interested. It's a huge, huge problem. And
how do you address that legislatively?
So what we did was we proposed a bill that said if an entity has been found to be a willful or repeat violator of our wage theft laws, and there's a process for that. You go through a process, but if you've been determined through this process to have been a willful violator of our wage theft laws, the state will not contract with you for a state contract for a period of 2 or 3 years. I forget the exact period of time. In other words, why are we contracting with entities that have been found to be willful violators of our wage theft laws? That doesn't seem right to reward them with a state contract, which can often be quite beneficial to them. So it's a simple bill. It says, hey, if you've been found to be a willful or repeat violator of our wage theft laws, we don't contract with you. I think it's for a period of time, 3 years or something like that.
How many businesses fall into that?
I can't remember the exact number, but we have there's a fair number that have been found to be willful wage theft violators, and in our states, yeah. So that bill passed. So it's there's a variety of bills we've had. If you want a list, we're happy to get it to you. But we've had a successful session. I think 6 bills so far, and with the session this year. Yeah.
One that I was kind of surprised that it passed was dealing with Navient, and it was a thinking of creating an ombudsman.
Yeah.
Having that
Yeah.
that source where students could go to and actually find somebody to talk to.
Yes.
Did you get any, I mean, I know it passed the House.
Yes.
Stalled in the Senate. Did you
Yes.
get any inside or background details as to why that didn't? I don't even think it got a committee hearing in the Senate, did it?
Right. No, I think that's right. It may not have got a committee hearing in the Senate. So again, this was creating an ombudsperson for students or borrowers where they can go to someone who can be an advocate for them, because these servicers and loan companies don't always play by the rules. We're doing the best we can to put resources into this, but to have someone who can be an advocate, and that's their job, right? 24/7. That's their focus. That we proposed this, and I guess it's hard to know. You're getting any bill, even the most benign piece of legislation that everybody supports. It's just the legislative process is tricky, right? So I'm not sure I can give you a. You'd have to ask the chair of the committee that wouldn't hear it,
Yeah.
right? And that's where the question really should go, right? I mean, there's a chair of a committee. He or she makes a decision on what bills come up, and they have complete authority to do that, right? And that's really probably where the question has to go, is to ask that person, hey, why did you not allow a hearing on that bill? Yeah, but it's but that's one we'll bring back again next year.
Doing that in proposing legislation, do you normally approach it from trying to contact the committee chairs, or is it better to have one real strong advocate in the Senate or in the House, or what's the best approach to actually get something through the legislative process?
All the above, right? So I have a guy named Mike Webb as my legislative affairs director. He's probably been here once before, I think, and so he's working that every day. That's his job. I'm obviously having conversations with legislators too on legislation. So yes, we obviously spend time with a committee chair, whether they're a sponsor of the bill or not, right? We often like to have our bills if we can anticipate what committee it's going to, often we'll go to that chair and say, do you want to be the prime sponsor of it? That's not unusual. But yes, it obviously helps to have a prime sponsor who is an advocate for it, who really will work the bill, right? It's not just one of 50 bills they have, and it's not a priority. You want someone who's really going to try and make an effort and make the asks and say, hey, this is important to me. Sure. And then we work all the. I mean, it's a full. We work it like anybody does with the bill. We talk to members, get our sponsors. The one thing, I think there's only been one exception to this in all the bills I proposed now in the last 5 years, is we always want the bills to be bipartisan in terms of the sponsors. I think the only one that did not get a Republican sponsor that I proposed, I probably proposed 50 of them at this point, is the assault weapons ban, which was disappointing. We thought we had a Republican who would, and that didn't happen, which I understand politically is a difficult issue for that person. And I think that's the only bill I proposed that did not have a Republican. So we always try to make them bipartisan. I think that helps, that everything we propose, always bipartisan. My team knows that. That's important to me. And with the divided legislature, it's also just smart if you want to get a bill passed, right? It's got to get through a divided legislature. But I think one reason we have so much success with getting our bills through is they can be focused on consumer issues, for example, protecting vulnerable populations, and they're bipartisan in terms of their support, and that does help.
What kind of traction did the assault weapons ban get?
We were having a hard time getting a hearing, and then we actually amended the bill to do we changed the bill. Then it got a hearing to do the following, which is in Washington State, you only have to be 18 to buy an assault weapon. Okay, and so the shooter up in the Mukilteo shooting, where those young people were killed, I think it was a 19-year-old was the shooter, and he walked into Cabela's to purchase an assault weapon and was able to walk out with it. There's no waiting period. So you buy an assault weapon, you can walk in. You only have to be 18. You can walk out with the assault weapon. If any of us walked in to Cabela's to buy a handgun, you'd have to wait. You can't walk out with a handgun. There's a waiting period for handguns, up to 10 days, while law enforcement does a background check. So I'm the Attorney General for the state. If I walk into Cabela's and say, I'd like to have a handgun, they'd say, great, sir, fill out this form. You'll hear back from us within 10 days. And I'd leave the store. But if an 18-year-old walks in, says, I want to have an assault weapon, they can walk out with that assault weapon. So the seller right there will run if there's a check they run right there, right? That's not being done by law enforcement. They have a system where it gets plugged in. But for handgun, there's a check that's actually run by law enforcement runs that. That makes no sense. It makes no sense. I don't care what anyone thinks about the Second Amendment, the right to bear arms, assault weapons, any of that. How can we have a system where an 18-year-old can walk into a store and walk out with an assault weapon, but an adult can't walk out with a handgun, right? And so we proposed a bill that essentially said you've got to be 21 to buy the assault weapon, and there's the same waiting period, exact same waiting period as there is for a handgun. And to give you a sense of how difficult it is to move legislation around around guns in the legislature, it got a hearing but no vote. They wouldn't take a vote on it. So it's a challenge, right? I mean, people often say sort of third rail of politics is issues related to guns, and there is some truth to it. But we'll bring it back next year. I just feel
so
that.
Is their argument then that they're going to get a gun anyway, right? If
Honestly,
they
I don't know
want
what.
a gun, they'll get a gun.
I think legislators are afraid. Legislators are. Guns. It's controversial. I get letters, right? Hey, Second Amendment. Hey, I support the right to bear arms. Absolutely, right? But that doesn't mean there can't be common sense gun laws around it, right? And I think this is one of them. You got to be 21 to have an assault weapon. You have to have the same waiting period as for a handgun. That seems pretty common sense to me. It'll be a challenge to get that through the legislature. We couldn't even get a vote in a committee on it. That's just politics today, right? So yes, do I think politicians are too cautious in general? Yes, I believe that. I believe that. But I'm going to keep bringing it back. I mean, I feel like make them make a choice, and maybe people ask them questions or call up the chair committee. Why didn't you allow a vote on that bill? Seems pretty straightforward. Why not? Why are you? It's because that is committee chairs have a lot of, as you know, they control these things. Yeah.
Isn't it more politically expedient for them though to not even take a vote on it, not bring it to the floor, instead of putting the members in position to have to weigh in?
Absolutely, it's protecting members, 100%. Absolutely right. No, that's there's no question about that, and. But I think that's too bad, right? I mean, I don't know. It's part of the reason why I proposed and made an agency request was I just felt like, hey, I want to put my name behind it and just put it out there. And with the death penalty as well, Rob McKenna, to his great credit, was with me at a press conference calling for the abolishment of the death penalty, which I greatly appreciate his willingness to do that. Because I think these issues really should transcend politics, right? I mean, these are important issues, and I just think the people deserve to know where their elected officials stand on these issues, right? Death penalty, assault weapons. I mean, where do you stand? What do you think?
Have you guys thought about a strategy beyond flipping the Senate for death penalty, to kind of give some momentum or traction?
Oh yeah, no, look, hey, this year, for example, with the legislature we had, I've been talking to Rob McKenna for a long time about the death penalty. In terms of bringing bipartisan support, getting bipartisan sponsors like Mark Malosha and Maureen Walsh. I personally engage in those conversations with folks to build support, and we'll continue that whether the Senate switches hands or not. My point is only that I think if you see it switch hands, I think it will move at that point. I think with the current leadership in the Senate, I don't think they will, just being candid, right? I don't think they will allow the vote to come up. But hey, I'm critical of both chambers. The House won't pass it, even though the votes are there as well. The Democrat-controlled House, they say, well, we won't do it because what's the point? The Republicans will never take the vote. That's no excuse to me. I'm a critic of both, right? Of both chambers, but I do think it'll move. But no, I just don't know how realistic it is it'll move with the current Republican leadership. I just think they've been very clear it's not going to, they're just not going to let it move. Even though I think I know a majority of members in both chambers support abolishing the death penalty, and so that's why I think it's a matter of time.
Is that one, do you think, should that go to the voters?
That was a big issue last year, a year before. I forget when it was. Maybe it was a year ago when the Prosecuting Attorneys Association, WAPA, Washington Association of Prosecuting Attorneys, that they actually came out with a formal position saying this should go to the voters, which, I think it shows also the evolution of with law enforcement officials thinking on the death penalty. It doesn't mean they all supported abolishing it, but they were saying, hey, let's put this to the voters. And I was supportive of that. That's not where the legislature wanted to go. So, but I'd be supportive of that as well. I just think there should be a vote, right? An opportunity to, I think if a state like Nebraska, the legislature there has voted to abolish. I think the governor vetoed it, as I recall, but Nebraska legislature, overwhelmingly Republican, voted to abolish the death penalty. States are taking up this issue and voting on it, and I think Washington should as well.
For you personally, say as a voter, as
Yeah.
a citizen, rather than Attorney General, would you prefer to go to a vote of the people or have the legislature address it?
I guess in general, my feeling has always been that we have a legislature for a reason, right? Their job is to take up the difficult issues of the day and choose, right? That's their job. Now, look, Washington has a strong initiative process and a strong populist tradition of going to the voters ultimately, but I think in general, my preference is the legislature should do their job. These are the big issues of the day. They should stamp and be counted and take their vote one way or the other. So I guess if forced to choose, right, the legislature, I think, should take the vote. Yeah.
So, what do you hear from the administration regarding state legalization of marijuana?
It's been interesting. The governor and I both sent one letter, both signed, to Attorney General Sessions. It's been a few months now about marijuana legalization and discussing why we think it's been working well in Washington and asking for a meeting. Haven't got an answer. Haven't got a response to that. So I think another letter is about to go out or is going out from me. I'm not. Well, you check with the team, but I know it's on the verge of going out to say, hey, I really do want to meet with you about this. And
Have you seen that with any of the other states where it's legal?
I think it's a good question. I feel like there was a conversation with Sessions, maybe a telephonic with, you'd have to Google it, with maybe a governor from Colorado, or I don't think it was an AG, but I feel like I read somewhere that there was like a telephonic conversation with Attorney General Sessions and I think a governor from one of the states. I think that's right, but I'm not positive. And but we've now received a response from our letter. I'm not aware of Attorney General Sessions meeting with any Attorney General from any of the states. Doesn't mean it hasn't happened, but I'm not aware of that. And we did meet with, in 2013 with Eric Holder, then U.S. Attorney General, talk about marijuana, the governor and I. So it's the same essential request to do that again. So I guess the short answer to your question is, I have not heard anything directly from the administration about marijuana legalization, so I can't really give you a.
Has he made any public comments or decisions since?
No decisions, but I mean, Attorney General Sessions has not been shy about his dislike for marijuana legalization.
And I'm trying to remember, even since he's been in office,
I think he's had,
previously,
I believe even through his confirmation proceedings, and I don't think, I think he's been upfront about it. Now. I try to separate out what someone says and what they're actually going to do, right? Those can sometimes be two different things, right? So the fact that nothing has happened so far against the states that have legalized, I take that as a positive, right? That said, I would appreciate a response to our letter. I mean, it's an important issue, and we are asking for a meeting, and we're happy to go to Washington, D.C. to do that. And I think it's an important enough issue that it merits a response from somebody in his office, if not him. Yeah. Yeah, but our role is clear, right? Defending the will of the voters, and I think one thing that will help now is more states have legalized marijuana. So it's not just Washington and Colorado.
Sure.
You've got blue states, red states, Alaska, purple states, and I think that just makes it more of a challenge for any administration to try and crack down on states that have legalized it. It's just
At this point, do you know off the top of your head how many states have approved recreational use?
Is it 5 states now, maybe?
I
5 states
don't
maybe
know.
now?
5 or 6.
5 or 6 maybe, yeah. 5 or 6 maybe. Yeah, maybe so, because Oregon, right, it's got to be 6 now at least. Yes, you're right, it's got to be 6 at least. California, yeah, there's got to be 6 at least. So it's, and more I think are back on the ballot this year or next year. So it's only going one direction, I think is, and so I think it could simply be that essentially events take over the issue at the federal level, right? The more states that do it, I think from a practical level makes it very, very difficult for any administration to say, no states, you can't, you've got to stop what you're doing, yeah. So we hope it does not come to a legal conflict, but my job would be to defend the legalization of marijuana if the federal government chose to do something to stop it from happening. Yeah. But no word yet from the administration on that.
Okay.
Yeah.
I'm curious, from a legal standpoint, do you believe that a special prosecutor should be appointed to investigate the administration's ties to Russia?
I do. I mean, it's the firing of the FBI director is troubling in the extreme, and the contradictory reasons now given for it. I mean, everything about it is problematic from my standpoint. And the independence of these investigations, whether it's the state level or the national level, is critical, right? I mean, I can't really imagine a system in which I could be fired, for example, for some investigation I had that, hey, the governor thought was a problem somehow for the state, right? That'd be unthinkable. And so, yes, I do. I do, and I'm glad we have a free press, right, which has also come under criticism of this administration, that is doing its work to uncover what's going on and find out things like, for example, Comey asking for more resources in recent days for the investigation. I think that's all helpful for the public to know, get a three-dimensional view of what's going on. But yes, I think that's I think that's needed here.
But all of the reporting that's gone on, isn't that just fake news?
So, yeah, right. That's the so it's really sort of attacks on the judiciary and the press.
Sure.
You know, I was actually back on the East Coast, and I was invited to go to the Washington Correspondents' Dinner, which I'd never been to before. So I went with my wife. It was fun, but the whole focus was different than past years, as you probably know. The president wasn't there, but the focus was Woodward and Bernstein spoke, but the whole focus was on the importance of the press, right? And especially now, and you know, it's true, right? And it is a challenge with the fake news and what's out there in terms of getting accurate information out to the public. So, but no, I appreciate what the press is doing on the Comey situation as one example. Yeah.
Bob, anything else we need to ask about or touch upon?
I don't think so. No, it's been a busy time, and so I don't know if I've gotten. There's always a zillion things going on, right? But yeah, go ahead. Yeah.
We have to ask you the obvious question.
Yeah, what's that?
Everyone asks you. Is, you know, if you're going to run for governor.
Oh yeah, it does that. Yeah, it's
That's like,
yeah. I enjoy the work that I'm
Yeah,
doing.
that's
I enjoy you right exactly right now. Yeah,
We
yeah.
asked the governor instantly if he was going to run for president.
Fair enough.
So are you going to run for governor?
Yeah, no, I'm happy in the work that I'm doing right now. Yeah, but it's
That's not a yes or no.
it's not. I don't look. I don't know what I'm doing tomorrow, let alone what I'm doing in 3 years, right? And but I often tell folks, you know, my wife is very supportive of my work, but she's a very, very private woman. We have young kids. She doesn't have a Facebook page. She's a private person. She's a private person, and she's very supportive of the work we do. But you know, it's a family decision. We have young kids, and that's the priority. That is 100% the priority. The other thing is on the professional side. Look, you know, when I was running for Attorney General, I probably said it right here when I was running for Attorney General in 2012, was I felt that being Attorney General, that position was the most consequential office in government. And back in 2012, folks would invariably give me kind of a funny look like, what are you talking about? I don't get a strange look anymore when I say that. I mean, I
So
believe
you
it.
still feel that way?
More than ever, right? I mean, hey,
Well,
you know, right? I mean, Attorney General, you know, you can stop a travel ban, right? I mean, the power of the office is significant, and you still play a key role in policy things, right? We go through the legislative process, and so, no, I mean, I love it. I mean, say I love it's an understatement. I mean, I find it very rewarding. Yeah.
well, I can honestly say with pretty much certainty that we have never before had one of Time Magazine's 100 most influential people sitting in that chair.
Yeah, it's only I think my mom actually believes that. And my 6 siblings, they're quick to remind me I'm not even the most influential person in my family. So as my older brother said, it's quite a promotion for Time Magazine to make it there. Yeah.
Well,
So,
congratulations.
yeah, I mean, you can't take those things too seriously. That said, they had a great party. They have a Time 100 gala
Yeah.
back in New York. So my wife and I went to that. And so they invite they invite the folks who've received it and past award recipients, and it was a great party. I mean, they have a great party. We had a blast. Yeah, it was a lot of fun, and so that was the best part of the whole thing. But no, you can't take. I mean, you can't. I mean, I appreciate the sentiment behind it, but you know, and it's a credit to the team. And when I often talk about sort of the timeline because I want folks to know that's not me sitting there working on a brief 24/7. There's a team in place, and a big part of that team, by the way, was not just my Solicitor General, but the civil rights team that I created back a couple of years ago, which we did not have a civil rights unit. No one in our office did civil rights work on behalf of the people of the state of Washington. We created that, and Colleen Melody's the head of that. And you know, she's from Spokane. She finished first in her class at UW Law School. She was doing civil rights work for Department of Justice when I brought her back to lead up this unit.
Yeah, how big is your staff now?
I think they are hiring 2 more attorneys, so I think they'll be at 7 attorneys plus, you know, they have investigators, paralegals. So there's a team of, let's say, about 10, right? It's grown significantly, and it was a number of key folks from that unit played a role. Patricio Marquez, Stanford Law graduate. Marcia Chen, Chancellor Ski Vacation, University of Pennsylvania Law School. And these are. Look, I was confident when I had to make the decision to do it, but I was confident we were not going to be out-lawyered in bringing that lawsuit. I mean, the legal team we have to do this, these folks they could all be in a corner office in any law firm in the country making a lot of money. I mean, with their backgrounds, you know, they're very, very good, very, very good lawyers. Yeah, and it showed in the work they did. I mean, to be able to, in fact, at the conference I was at, you know, a lot of people came up, not just say, hey, great job for winning, but the quality of the legal work and how quickly it was done. You know, Noah's oral argument with just hours to prepare for it. I mean, it's a real credit to them that they were able to pull that off under such intense time constraints. My God, I mean, it was so the legal team is very, very strong. I think that's a big reason why we won.
Right. Well,
Yeah.
well, Bob, congratulations.
Thanks.
Thank you
Thanks.
very much.
No, thanks for having me. Really appreciate it.
Speak with
Yeah,
us.
yeah, absolutely. Great seeing you. Have a great day. Yeah.